One of the things that I've been thinking about is that when we have world leaders like we have seen now in the Oval Office, the only one missing there was Putin. But you could have a meeting between 30 or 40 world leaders in a nice room without any secretaries and any assistants, just them. Cup of coffee, a piece of pizza, just, chill, hang out, and talk things out. And one of the things about Donald Trump that he's a complex personality, but follows his gut. And he goes like, I'm going to call Putin right now, there's no protocol whatsoever. And I kind of like that. He's spontaneous. He follows his logic. And so the thing is that even though Russia invaded Ukraine and started this upscale, what they call special action, whatever. And even though the Allies are the ones that have been providing all the weaponry and advice and so forth to stem his advances and keep him locked in, and at the beginning, promising membership of NATO and everything. But it is true that after the Iron Curtain lifted and the Soviet Union was dissolved, that was done on the basis that NATO would not, with all their missiles and so forth, would not come right onto the border of Russia. And that seems to make sense because you have to remember the Russians, they were attacked by Napoleon. They were attacked afterwards by the Germans twice. They were attacked by the Japanese from the back. And so they definitely, and we're talking about, tremendously powerful nations who invaded Russia with all intent to take over, and to not only take over the land and said, okay, from here on we're going to work things out together, co-prosperity, something like that. No. It was like, let's wipe all these people off the face of the earth. We need that space, but we don't want them. So they went through this sort of slaughterhouse experience, but they were the victims. They had to actually get up on their own feet, and they had to sacrifice, for all these tremendous offensives where they fought back all the way from Moscow and Leningrad and Stalingrad and the Ukraine, all the way, pushed the Germans all the way back through the Balkans and everything, all the way back through Poland, all the way back to Germany, by using literally human waves, assaults where you had, tens of thousands and hundreds of thousands of casualties, pretty much like the First World War. Because they did not have the industrial capability necessary at that time. Till afterwards, yes, but not then. Anyway, I can understand how they felt comfortable by strategically, not tactical, but strategically keeping a belt of nations under their influence that would have their under their control, their political control. So that would never happen again. Once again, it's a very large country, but it doesn't have that many inhabitants. has a relatively small population. It doesn't have that much of an economy either because of that. I mean, South America has 660 million people. Europe has like 480 million people. Germany has 85 million people. And so the United States has like 350 million people. So it's very complicated because if you have a vast, vast territory, it means that you have to build 50 miles of road instead of 1 mile. And you have to put 50 times more light posts and telephone posts and infrastructure, basically, than you have to in Europe. Because Europe, everything is not only close, everything is cramped. So that's something that has to be taken into account, into consideration. That it is understandable that the Russian Federation wants to have a buffer zone and a zone of influence around them. And just like every other larger nation, industrial nation especially, they also want to and they need to have access to strategic resources which they can then purchase, right? And that may include food items, or maybe minerals, or maybe whatever. So I think it would be an interesting thing to consider. Just that, okay, well, you know what, Ukraine, stop it, you're not going to be part of NATO. And that's it. And the other NATO members that are bordering with Russia, there could be an agreement where no missiles would be located within those countries. The same as the United States get nervous when Cuba or Venezuela is going to have missiles. They're not very comfortable with that. And I understand that. The same that Europe doesn't want to have missiles too close. Who wants that? Nobody. But basically nobody wants to have missiles. These nuclear things. It's just not good. It's not good. Anyways, the thing is that when we choose world leaders, they are supposed to be crème de la crème. They are really supposed to be, we elect them, individuals, governments that can actually solve these kind of problems, work out these kind of situations, so that there's no war. Because war is extremely expensive, right? The thing is that very often the general public will choose a leader because they want them to solve the problems in their state, in their town, in their city, in their borough. They want to have solutions to their personal lives. They want less taxes. They want, less inflation, and so forth. So these are sort of things that. So sometimes they select popular leaders who can actually work out these sort of things, because that is the narrative. That is the normal necessities of the average person. Yeah. And sorry, I'm stirring my rice. Have a little rice later on. And there we go. But no, we need to choose leaders. Maybe we need two presidents. We need one to take on the internal affairs of a country, and another one who takes on the global affairs. That there's more trained for that, chosen by the public. And but it could be interesting to think about it, that if we have a mechanism, a global sort of mechanism that connects all the constitutions, and any president or government that proves itself incapable of maintaining peace, and just jacks up the discourse of yes, but and it ends up in a conflict, then those leaders should be suspended automatically, because they went to war. Now, okay, there's war, so okay, even if it wasn't their fault, they tried not to, that it wouldn't happen. They did their best, but they didn't manage to. And it's always the generals and the military who will finally say, okay, this is what we're going to do. So simply replace them with other people, and that will have to hold these conversations and stop these conflicts. Because the people from the government, they have bunkers. They can think about, they can say hi to each other and thank you very much for thinking and talk nice. When I looked at all these world leaders sitting in the Oval Office, everybody was taking it serious, because this is a serious thing. They really want this. But at the same time also they were relaxed, It was not their country being destroyed on a daily basis. The only person in that group who was really, and must be, bleeding, truly, is Zelensky. He was a true hero, that man. The stamina, the grit he has. At the beginning, the first thing everybody said is, okay, come to our country, leave it, they're attacking with 200,000 men from Kiev, and he said, no, I'm staying. But not only that, he's close to his men, he's close to his people. To him, he feels heartfelt what goes on to his people, to his soldiers. And he's also keenly aware that he's just a servant. That, if they want him to step down, that it's not about him, it's not even about his opinions. He goes like, I don't know, I have to look into what the Constitution says. It says, because obviously I'm only the president, I'm a public servant, but I also have to see what the people of Ukraine want to say. Do they want to keep fighting, or do the people from Ukraine, if they're 65% of the population, says, listen, cut a deal, we lose territory, but we can't win this one. And then, okay. But on the other hand, also, if you give in and you surrender, it may encourage other people to continue doing the same thing. And so it's not a matter of a surrender, it's a matter of stopping the war, bringing it to a standstill, and then Ukraine would have to have a buffer zone and a powerful army of peacekeepers should be in the middle between them, all the way around the periphery of the whole country, so that there are not going to be new incidents of artillery shells and this and that, Because now, of course, there's a lot of personal pain. There's a lot of grief, and there's a lot of anger now. That may take generations to heal. If anything, Russia has achieved now to deepen, to strengthen, to consolidate the Ukrainian identity as a country. Because before it was always a little bit like, they were always part of Russia. Now the Ukrainians, they go like, if we are from Russia, why did they attack us then? They killed my son, they killed my husband, they killed my father. So, but yes, how can it be that our leaders are supposedly the best prepared persons to lead all our countries, and that world leaders around the world are not capable of avoiding war? And it's always, when you look at the leaders in the government, and they're giving a speech, and it's official and protocols, and they always have these military men standing behind them. And they're always very connected with the military, as if the military is another power within the country, which it is. So, but that is something that if we are a civilization and we are capable and we are intelligent and we have artificial intelligence and we have all sort of algorithms and whatever, how can it be that we cannot have, because I am not saying it's easy. There's a lot of technical aspects about geopolitics and resources and so forth. So it's not necessarily black and white always. It gets very complicated very quickly. But there must be a way to find a solution to this. For example, with the Ukraine now, how much is it going to cost for all the European countries to keep giving them weapons? How much is this going to cost to Ukraine? How much has been spent already so far between all the parties? $1 trillion? I don't know. How much has been already spent? So massive amounts of money and resources are just simply wasted. The Second World War, for example, I read the other day, only Germany, it cost them, at the cost of living today, it cost them like $5.8 trillion. That's what they invested in 5 years of war. All that, $6 trillion would just burn, like watching money burn in the fire. And how long did it take for them to recover their economy? And the same already was happening with the First World War, when they were very, very prosperous during the time of Kaiser Wilhelm II. So, how smart is that? The British Empire, that was the end pretty much of the British Empire. I mean, the First and Second World War, it really took it out of them. And that's when the United States became powerful. How many assets did they lose? So how can it be intelligent? Okay, maybe we had to during the history of humankind. That was the way for the powers to be, to establish themselves, the empires. It was the struggle, the jungle, the law in the jungle, and this and that. Natural selection. Natural selection has always been a matter of competition, but adaptation of, the survival of the fittest, of the one that adapts best. So why can both sides not adapt best and not burn up all that money and all those resources and destroy all those assets they have and put their people through that kind of suffering? Beastly. Slaughtering on the industrial level. So, if we calculate how much all those wars cost, or in this case, the Ukrainian episode, then is it not worth it to invest $1 trillion in saying, okay, we're going to all put in some money, everybody, and this has cost us $1 trillion that we blew away, and this is going to cost another $1 trillion, so it's going to be $2 trillion. Let's, between all of us, come up with that money over a certain amount of time, and we're going to rebuild, whatever everybody needs. And so, for example, let's say the territory that Russia has occupied now, and, they have held it with the lives of their soldiers, so they're not going to want to let that go. That's an understandable thing. It's not the right thing, but it's the understandable thing. And say, okay, fine, if you're going to keep all that land, how much is it worth? So we're going to make this pool of $2 trillion or $3 trillion, and then we're going to pay Ukraine for the territory they have lost. Just like Russia and Alaska, they swap land for money. And then Ukraine gets all this money injected. It becomes an economic powerhouse. You don't need that much territory now to be an amazing economy, right? To be an economic power. So Europe can make that happen without Ukraine belonging per se to NATO. But what can be done is that the border between Ukraine and the Russian land, they can create, 500 meters or something like that, a zone that is, kept clear, and that does not belong to Ukraine, and it does not belong to Russia. And it belongs to, you create a new country. A country that has several partners on paper, a paper country. And that country is now the holder of that territorial band or belt. It could be 1 kilometer in depth, whatever, 1 or 2. Whatever they decide. That land belongs to that other country. But that country is composed by shareholders from a group of countries. They have then their own flag and their own money, and they have their own peacekeeping military. And of course they have access They have corridors, and agreements to transit through Ukraine and so forth for supplies and all that. Because the shareholders would be partly from NATO, but could be China, it could be India, it could be Turkey. Even one of the shareholders could even be Russia. Why not? Just a matter of shareholders. And that could be something that could be said, let's put this into function for the next 30 years. And but every 5 years we will come together and we will analyze how things are going and what we can do. It doesn't mean that this country cannot be dissolved again or that new arrangements cannot be made over time and so forth. But one of the most important things is that NATO and Europe have to keep their distance from Russia. But because that is the essential problem, is that fear that, NATO could attack, or NATO has that fear that Russia could attack, which is kind of silly because they have nuclear missiles. So if they want to attack, NATO and the United States is never going to have a conventional war directly with Russia, because that's going to turn nuclear. So it will never be started. Short of a skirmish somewhere, it will never be, it will never happen. But on the other hand, sorry, my rice pot. On the other hand, why do we have to have, we have communism or socialism, and we have capitalism, what we call democracy, I don't know. The whole planet goes to war because of those two different philosophies. And that is the problem. The West is scared of communism. And communism is wary of capitalism. But I'm going to say something. Let's say that we take Russia, and we take the Russians out, and they go on vacation to the United States, right? And we take the people from the United States, and they go on vacation to Russia. And we set up the American system in Russia with the Americans, and we leave them doing their thing, right? I don't know, for 20 years or 30 years. And the Russians, they go to the United States and they establish their communist model, whatever. They're not communists, socialists. So then what would happen? Russia would still be Russia because the territory is always there. And the Russians in the United States, being in the United States, they will still be Russians because they are there. And they reproduce. They have babies with Mexican girls. Huh? So nothing really is going to change. Nothing is really going to change. So there is, I'm not saying there must be, but there is a model of governance that is universal. And so far, we've been fighting to discover and to develop models and cultures, and now we have gone global for 50, 100 years, whatever. But the thing is now we need a universal model that is neither capitalistic, that is neither communist, that is not extreme, but it is a model in between that is based on the human aspects, not capital 100%, but on humans. We need to take the economies from the world, China and the United States and Germany and everybody else, and we need to scale down. We need to consume less. We need to live more. And so I would dare to suggest a provident lifestyle, a providential model, where we provide, and we provide for organic food and healthy things. We do away with the chemicals. There's 8,000 different types of chemicals that we are using now, and it keeps increasing. It's absolutely crazy. We're poisoning ourselves. We're eating very bad food. In the States, at least, very poisonous. The same food in Europe is much healthier. So, what we need to do is the pursuit of happiness. And to have these societies where everybody has to work in the companies, and everybody work, and it's and it becomes obsessive, and 2 jobs, and bureaucracy, and paying this, and the card, and the credit cards, and all that, it's madness. It's madness. Believe me if I say that 40% of what we consume is not that it's not necessary. It is actually a hindrance. There's no space to put it. There's no real use for it. And the main issue that we always are thinking about is about how to make money and how to be successful. We don't. You have food, good food. You have love. You have time. You have a simple roof over your head that belongs to you, but it's not luxurious. You don't need you need some space. It's nice to have a garden. Much less bureaucracy, much less rules. In Europe, in the States and everything, you look at all these rules. Why do you want to have all these rules? Why do we do that to ourselves, to have all these rules? Now you can't even live in a neighborhood without having the neighborhood rules. It's crazy. So, what we need to find a consensus worldwide on what is the most desirable, what are the most important things. Probably a little bit based on asking everybody, what is it that we really want? Tell me 30 things. And of the 30, tell me 5 top ones. And then tell me 30 things you don't want, and of those 30 things, tell me 5 top ones that you don't want. And that would be like a questionnaire we just send to everybody. And we get, 2-3 billion answers. And to see really on a planetary basis, what we want. Because everything that you guys are doing, I don't want it. There's nothing I can do about it. Oh, I can vote. Yeah, well, big deal. But the system is always the same. It hasn't changed in the last 50, 60 years. It still is the same. So unless you get involved, which is another complicated thing, you can't have everybody involved in politics. So it's not good. Politicians anywhere, it's have a lot to be ashamed of, and they're not doing a good job for the rest of the world. And I think that a great revision is called for, a reset, a jubilee. Do away with all the debts and everything else, and just go like, you know what? Hey, money. It's just pixels. That's what it is. It's all made up. They say, like, make a clean plate. Come on. What are we going to do for the next 10 or 15 years? Where are we going to put the money? To make a stable, nice, happy world global community. Stop pulling all the gold out of the ground everywhere. Destroying mountains, aquifers. Beautiful, geological structures with ecosystems that it took millions of years to form. And in 10, 20 years, we just drill these holes in the jungle, in the rivers, in the mountains, to pull out all that stuff. It's totally useless. Unless it's for some electronics. There's nothing else. Who cares if something is gold-plated? What's wrong about just stone? Well, why do we have to have a building that is so sophisticated? Do we? No, we don't. There's so much that we strive for that we think is vital and important. Things we are building. For example, this new church in Barcelona, the Spanish Gaudi church, whatever. It's impressive, I agree. It's art. Close to 200 years of human endeavor to build this massive thing in the middle of a city. And the only thing it is actually good for is for people to go and look at it. And so that's going to attract more tourists. So now we can travel all the way from the other side of the world, fly to Europe to go and look at a church. People from Europe, they can fly across the Atlantic and they can go and take a look at New York City, at the buildings. In the past, it used to be going to see the Empire State Building. It was a big thing. Now there's nothing special about New York. But what is it with us that we want to go and build these highest buildings in the world and we want to go and take a look at them? Who cares how high a building is? Luxury, artistic perfection, is a little flower pot with a little plant and a few flowers. And you use one of those small little lenses to look at. And you look inside of the flowers and around the whole structure of that plant. The sheer beauty. There's no set of jewelry that can rival with it. Not Tiffany, not Fabergé, nothing. There's nature. What can be more beautiful than looking in the eyes of your own child when they're born? Or your little girl, when she's a couple of years old. Or it doesn't matter what age. Or someone you love. It's because we have to reset our mind. We have to reset our mind. This is a mandate that I am sending to the world with love, with all-embracing love. It's a mandate. We have no choice. The only choice we have is love. All the rest, it's not an option. There's no more time.